big up characters wishing people dead. I don't know. Like, hi, my name is Romy. Welcome or welcome back to Start Pages. Happy New Year. So the first video of 2025 that I want to do is my best and worst books of 2024. So when creating this list, I was faced with the fact that I might have to reconsider the rating of some of the books that I read throughout 2024, because I went into creating this list with the belief that it would be easy to narrow down all my best books, and all I had to do was write down the ones that I gave 4 stars or above, because I knew that 2024 was not my best reading year. It was not that great. But as I scroll through my Storygraph stats page, I was shocked at how many books I completely forgot about that I rated 4 stars or higher. Or books that I remembered, but when it came to add them to the list, I hesitated because I wouldn't characterize them as favorites. And then based on how I do my ratings and how I go about reading, I want to give 5 stars to books that I can easily say that I would reread every year if I have the time. And how can I call a book a 5 star if I don't even remember reading it? Like, there were some 5-star books I was like, really? Really? Anyway. So I don't think this is necessarily a negative thing on my part. I think it's a testament to my growth as a reader and a reviewer. We're going to stick with that throughout the year. I find it interesting that this level of development happened in a single year, because while I am well aware of the changes in my critical reading skills, actually, no, let's take away the quotations, because I do have critical reading skills. In my critical reading skills and reading taste, now compared to when I first started reviewing books, so that's when I had the book blog, which was what? Let's not think about it. 6 years? Maybe let's think about it. 6 years ago? 7? 5? I don't know. But to see this drastic of a change in just 1 year is crazy, right? It's kind of crazy, yes? If I reviewed any of these books on my channel, I will obviously be leaving the videos up because I don't have that much content to be taken down. But the major reason is that I'm pretty sure my actual review of the book hasn't changed that much, but only the rating that I assign to it I would change, because I would say my ratings are more of a subjective or emotional feelings towards the book, while the review, like my actual points in the review, are more logical, which means like I can point out details that could have been better, but it didn't impact my reading taste. And I doubt many of my reviews would change that much, so I don't need to set on the video. One example of my rating changing but the review staying more or less the same would be The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. I initially gave this book 5 stars, but upon my rereading this year to complete and review the entire trilogy, which is a video that will be coming out soon, so look forward to that, my rating changed to a 3.5 stars. 3.5 from a 5 star is crazy. What I liked about the book the first time around still stands, and I did have critiques in my original video that once again I still stand by. It's just that now my ability or my desire to overlook those flaws drastically increased. Like, I'm done overlooking bullshit. 2024 was not the year to be accepting bullshit, right? So if anything is to be done about these books or the reviews that I've posted, I'll probably just post an updated review probably after a reread to cement my thoughts, because as I've said, I don't remember reading them, so I can't talk about them. I can't update the review if I have nothing to say. So now on to the list. For the best books of 2024, spots 1 and 2 are pretty interchangeable, so I just decided to list them in the order in which I read them. As I'm editing, I'm realizing the whole thing is ranked in the order in which I read it, so disregard any placement. Number 1, Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White. Big up my man Andrew Joseph White, because his works, amazing. I love them. Like, yeah, like Andrew Joseph White has been one of my newly discovered favorite authors in the past 2 or 3 years. So I was very privileged to receive an arc of all 3 of his books when they were coming out, and I loved all 3 of them. I just stumbled upon Hell Followed With Us on NetGalley in 2022, and then I read the book and I loved it immediately. And then Spirit Bears Its Teeth went on NetGalley in 2023. It was published in September, but unfortunately I started university at the time, so I was really struggling to get to my arc. So I read this in February 2024. So I will be talking about The Spirit Bears Its Teeth in this video because it was great, just not right now. But I will be doing a full review of all 3 of Andrew Joseph White's books, so look forward to that. But that means I won't be talking about Compound Fracture too much in this video. So I did just praise Andrew Joseph White to the high heavens, but we're not going to talk about Compound Fracture too much. But what I will say, character work amazing, atmosphere amazing, everything I'm like amazing. The way he wrote feelings, I thought I was the one feeling them. It's like it's crazy. Like I was in Miles's head. Like I was Miles. And speaking of Miles, that's my son. I love him. I would kill anybody for Miles. Straight up. Nobody can touch Miles. So Compound Fracture, the closest I've come to crying over a book in 2024. Because I was worried about my boy, Miles. I was really worried something irreversibly bad was going to happen to him. And I fully believed it could have happened. Like, it wasn't one of those books where you're like, oh, nothing can happen because da 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 da. Plus, I was scarred. Divergent scarred me. So I was terrified. And I almost cried. But anyway, one detail that I will talk about was how AJW wrote such awful characters, acknowledged that their situations and environments had a role in what they became, but then also acknowledged that just because you can see and empathize or sympathize, no, you'll probably empathize in this case. Well, speaking of, like, Miles can empathize with what happened to them. It doesn't excuse their actions, and you can still feel terribly about the person and what they did to you. Like, you can still hate them and wish them dead. Like, big up characters wishing people dead. I don't know. Like, maybe I sound like an awful person, but sometimes fictional characters are allowed to want people to die, like to not feel bad if somebody's dead. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. If morally gray, that's what y'all love to talk about, right? Morally gray people. Night Strider by Sophia Slade, one of my most anticipated reads of 2024. I had been following Sophia Slade for a good couple of years, mostly for 21 Pilots content, and then she started talking about her self-published book, Night Strider, and I was like, oh, maybe that will be the first book I buy on like the Kindle store, the ebook, you know. But then she announced that she got picked up to be traditionally published, and I was so happy for her and so excited to read the book. And then lo and behold, like a month after I signed up for Orbit's reviewer program thing, they released an email that Night Strider was one of the arts that you could request, and immediately I requested it and I got approved and I loved it. So I do have a full review of Night Strider. It was the last video I posted in 2024, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. Like my actual thoughts, I'm not going to talk about it too much. But Ren owns my heart. I love a bisexual queen, and I need the following books in the series immediately. For Feminism by Serene Khader, the one nonfiction book I read in 2024, even though I had a goal to read 6. So I wanted to read one nonfiction book for every 2 months to like start off my nonfiction journey, but I read one. And that's okay. For me, this was a good introduction to feminist literature, mostly because it spoke about the ideas and stances that I already thought about and or agreed with, debated ideas that I, again, already thought about and or dismissed, and also gave me the words to solidify or explain why I think the way I do about certain things. It wasn't groundbreaking for me in the sense that it didn't introduce me to anything completely new, but it mostly just introduced me to the names of theories I already knew about but like didn't know the names of. For example, girl boss feminism, which I think I will be discussing in my video discussing the Deathless series, so the Gilded Ones, the Merciless Ones, the Eternal Ones by Namina Forno. I'm coming out with a discussion video of all 3 of those books, either in this month or next month, so look out for that. One thing that stood out to me was that the book didn't stick to an entirely US perspective. Even though it was mostly US focused, Khader did acknowledge and discuss a few perspectives from the wider world, so I enjoyed that. Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson, a very popular book when it was released in 2022, right? I wasn't going to pick it up, but then people kept talking about it, and once again, I was not going to succumb to peer pressure, but I saw a copy of it in Kingston Bookshop, of all places, and if you live in Jamaica, you know how hard it is to find books that you actually want to read in the bookstore. Like, it is getting better because they do have manga in Kingston Bookshop now, and they are getting some better books because we're not going to talk about it, but like they're getting better, but Kingston Bookshop is still where you go for textbooks, notebooks, pencils. You don't go there to find books. You go on Amazon, you go on Barnes and Noble, you go on eBay, which is what I've started doing to buy secondhand books. But anyway, right, so I picked it up. I didn't have especially high hopes because if you've watched any of my videos before, or my reviews of Jamaican books, or my discussion on Jamaican books, I don't have the best experience. And I don't think it's my fault. It's just the books are not that great. Like, not to sound holier than thou or anything. But I didn't go into it with the bar in hell because Jamaican reviewers that I trust, and by Jamaican reviewers with an S, I'm talking about one person, Kiki from If This Is Paradise, big up Kiki, read this and gave it a positive, or in terms of my rating, mostly or semi-positive rating. So Black Cake, I enjoyed the overall story of Black Cake more than the Jamaican cultural aspect of this book. And even though I say that, you can't necessarily separate the Jamaicanness of the story from like the story itself. But what I mean is that the Jamaicanness of the story was more focused on the culture being passed down, mostly in the chapters following the siblings. And I didn't feel like you were experiencing the Jamaican culture yourself. Like, the reading experience was more watching other people experience Jamaican culture or watching it being passed down. And I don't know if I'm explaining this particularly well, so I'm going to probably do an even worse job and give you a really bad metaphor to explain what I mean. So when I read a Jamaican story, I want to swim in a pool. I want to sit down on the pool floor and have the water that's surrounding me, the water that's filling up the pool, be the Jamaican culture being depicted in the book, right? I want to be completely immersed. In Black Cake, the reading experience was not sitting at the bottom of the pool. It was if there was this hypothetical modern art display. Like, imagine you go to like an art show or something. I don't know. I've never been to one, and I don't think they have those types of things in Jamaica. Like, if I go to foreign and I go to like, or they have them a museum or something, I don't know. And you have on the wall, there's this, like, imagine with me, there's this display of clear pipes, like plumbing pipes, but they're transparent, right? And the whole experience of the art is to watch the water flow through the pipes and go in different directions and end up wherever they're going, right? So reading Black Cake was watching this hypothetical modern art display and not sitting at the bottom of the pool. You get what I'm saying? If I'm chatting shit, I probably am. But anyway. So it's not necessarily bad, and one isn't necessarily better than the other. It's just I want to say I prefer the pool thing, but I haven't really experienced anything with the pool. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm hoping to find the one book that feels like I'm sitting at the bottom of the pool, right? And while I want to acknowledge that while I was watching the hypothetical water in the hypothetical clear pipes, I did have a few Leonardo DiCaprio moments. You know that meme with him sitting on a chair and pointing? Like, I was like, oh, I can't tell you exactly what I was pointing at anymore, but I do remember feeling like, oh, that's a Jamaican thing. Or, oh, yeah, that is real, you know? Okay, I'm going to backtrack for half a second. And when I say that I want to be immersed in the pool, mostly I want more books by Jamaican authors that are, like, Jamaican authors, whatever the opposite of diaspora is. I want books written by those people. Written in the last 10 years, at least. Contemporary stories. Because if I want to read some old or oldish books, I can just go and look at my high school literature book list and read all of those. And I did it already because it was on the book list and I had to read them. And I like to read. And so, yeah, I can read those and read the story, like read the experience of my grandparents and my parents. But I want to read my experience, you know? I want to see it represented. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm looking for Jamaican stories. And that's not what you get when you read diaspora stories, usually. So with that's what I mean when I want to be in the pool. Am I making sense? But also, I want to say, when you have Jamaican diaspora authors writing Jamaican stories, I prefer them to take the route that Wilkerson took, you know? Like, I would rather watch the water flow through the pipes if you're a diaspora author. Because usually, when they attempt, keep in mind I said attempt, to write stories from the perspective of a born and raised Jamaican, usually set in the island of Jamaica, them fuck it up bad. Like, bad. But moving on, as I said, I love the overall story, and I think the character work was great, and the different relationships in this book. I also appreciated the discussion of biphobia, but then again, a bit of the writing was odd to me. Like, a bit of the story elements was odd to me. Like, the whole, like, getting angry at your daughter and she leaving and you pretend to cut her off, but you secretly watch over her for years thing. It never made no sense to me, and I never understand. That's probably a spoiler, so I'm going to put a spoiler notice up. Sorry about that. Fred Martin ruins it all. I do have a full review of this. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but this is the second character from 2024 that stole the book. So you have Ren from Night Strider and then Ren from Ren Martin Ruins It All. Love them. The book was cute, light-hearted, even though it did delve into a few deeper topics and did them well, might I add. It still kept the overall tone, and I like that. But mostly I liked Ren, okay? Not like romantically. It's like Miles. I'm adopting Ren, you know? The Spirit Based Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White. Big up Andrew Joseph White once again. As I said, I'm going to do a full review of all of his books. Not going to talk about this one too much, but I have this one ranked third in my little AJW ranking. This one is second to Hell. Like, I gave it 4.5 stars instead of 5 stars, mostly because it was a bit slower than Hell Followed With Us. Like, it leans more towards gothic literature, like gothic horror literature. Not all the way, but it has that vibe. And I don't hate it. But, you know, it's not as great as what I read in Hell Followed With Us, for me at least. Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, Volume 1 by MXTX. I read this before it had an official translation. Like, you know, when you'd have to go and find one of those fan translations, like a PDF of the fan translation, and if you download it, it might probably give you a phone a virus. Yeah, I did that. And I got the whole brick of the entire series, and I read that on my phone when I was supposed to be studying for exams in high school. And I loved it. Yes, I read that after watching The Untamed, and because it wasn't explicitly gay enough, and I don't mean like I want to see sex on the screen. Like, that's not what I mean when I say, but like they have to deal with censorship, right, in China, and I understand that, and they did a lot for like what they had to deal with censorship in The Untamed. It was amazing. The wigs weren't that great, but after a couple episodes, you get over it, because I feel like it was like 60 episodes, and they were each like an hour long or something. It was long, so after a while, you don't notice the wigs anymore. So yeah, so I have Volume 1 of the Seven Seas translation, and I want to say it's okay. I think I gave it 4 stars. It's not my favorite. Like, I haven't read the official translations of the rest of the volume. I'm hoping to do that in this year, hopefully. But Volume 1, like, the stuff that I love about the book, other than the characters, because, you know, we get Wei Wuxian, we get Lan Wangji. Like, other than them, the stuff I love about the story, they didn't start happening in Volume 1 yet. So, like, I would have preferred to have everything and just, like, read Volume 1 straight to 5. I think it's 5 of them. But Volume 1 is okay. I don't know if I made any sense. The Blood King by Abigail Owen. I received The Blood King and The Rogue King as extra books in a fake rate box a couple years ago, because it's been a while since I've been subscribed to any book boxes. But I was really excited for them because I was a shifter romance girly on Wattpad. In the Wattpad days, I was a shifter romance girly. And this was before, like, I'm sorry about my Wattpad days. These are when you could download your entire library. Like, I think they have, like, a limit. You can only have, like, 4 books offline, something now. And most of them are paid stores or something. Back in my day, we never have that. Back in my day, we never have that. So yeah, when I was reading those those werewolf romance books, when I, like, under my desk, because you're not allowed to have your phone at school, and I had my phone and I was risking everything to read some werewolf romances. So The Blood King, Dragon Chaser romance, slay. I enjoyed it. I prefer The Blood King over The Rogue King. It's the other way around. I prefer The Rogue King over The Blood King, mostly because of the romance. The Rogue King had more of a romantic development, like on-page romantic development, and it was more fleshed out. And the Blood King focused more on politics. And I like politics, but I was looking for, like, shifter romance in the Blood King. So I enjoyed it. It just wasn't my favorite. Then, number 9, Wash Day Diaries by Jamila Rowser and Robyn Smith. This one is the perfect palate cleanser, right? It's a quick read, and thankfully the story itself didn't suffer from the book's length. The illustrations were beautiful, and you could probably enjoy the book just by looking at the pictures. Like, you flip the page, oh, look at the pretty pictures. You could just do that, and I feel like you would still give it 5 stars or 4.5, right? Which is what I gave it, I think. I love the way, as I said, I love the art style. I love the way the characters in particular were drawn. I truly loved how different that's the big thing, like how different the characters look, right? Love that. And finally, I must say that Rowser and Smith wrote and illustrated each character's story beautifully and conveyed their friendship in such an amazing way, right? Finally, we have Give Me a Sign by Anna Sortino. I discussed this in our reading vlog, so I'm going to link that vlog and I'm not going to talk about it too much. But love the romance and the discussions about deafness and the deaf community in this book. So those are my top 10 books of the year. And as I said, it wasn't a great reading year. It was okay. But those books, those 10 were great. Now, let's rant and cuss. My worst books of 2024. The worst book I read in 2024. My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna Van Veen. I think this one was is number one because I should have DNF'd it. I have no idea why I finished this book. It pissed me off so bad. I remember getting a headache and a slight fever from how pissed off I was. Forcing myself through the last 20% of this. I can picture the reading experience right now because my youngest sibling went to the movies with her friends. And I was in the car, in the parking lot, reading the book, forcing myself to read the book, waiting for the movie to finish. And I just felt like breaking up everything. I felt like going around and smashing people's windows the way I was pissed off about this book. And why did I do that to myself? I have no idea why I did that to myself. But I was slightly curious about where the story would go, which is why I ended up rating this book 2 stars instead of the 1.5 stars that I feel it deserves, right? So I wasn't the biggest fan of the way the author left the existence of ghosts up to the readers. As a concept, I understand it, but personally, I felt this wasn't the story to leave that plot point open-ended. No, wrap it up. Pick a side and stick to it. I was apathetic, I want to say, towards the main character, and I want to say because her POV was a slog to get through, so it was slow. But I didn't necessarily hate her, which is why I'm going to say apathetic, right? But then again, I found the interspersed psychologist sessions to be slow as well. So there was really nothing about the writing style I loved in this book. So I don't know what I'm talking about. The sapphic relationship, though, this is the one positive I can say about this book. I think it did a good job depicting toxic obsession, okay? That's all. This Fatal Kiss by Alicia Jacinka. This never gave me the reading experience I was expecting. Because the cover, beautiful. The description, the synopsis, amazing. But then I struggled throughout the first 35% of the book. Struggled so much that I read about 35%, DNF'd it, picked it back up, tried to read 35% again, DNF'd it again, picked it up, and then had to skim through that 35% to move on, to get through it. And then the middle was okay. It picked up speed, but then the last 15% pissed me off. It pissed me off bad. My issues with this book fall under 3 categories: writing, world building, and then etc. We'll talk about etc. So the writing, I feel like the writing mostly struggled because the author tried to include TikTok humor, and by this I mean there were a couple of phrases or descriptions that were intended to be funny, but they just came off jarring since they didn't match the setting, and we're gonna talk about the setting. Phrases like Sky Daddy and That's a Mood, they had no place in this book. Don't piss me off. They had no place in this book. Right. World building and setting, or world building or setting. Biggest issue was I had no clue what the setting was. Where are we? When are we? Why are we? Most of the setting had a vague historical vibe. What stage in history? I don't know. Don't ask me that. I'm not a historian. But then there would be some throwaway phrases that had modern or technically advanced items with no explanation of how they fit into the story. There was magic, and the magic was used as an explanation sometimes. But we're not going to talk about when they were explained. I'm talking about the stuff that wasn't explained. What? What's happening? What's happening? I was mostly confused about the transportation, because I think they had buses or something like that. But then there are a few other things that felt odd. I didn't judge the book too harshly for those few other things, because as I said, this book is fantasy, and she didn't give an exact description of when the time period was, so I can't say those few things didn't fit into the time period because I didn't know what time period we're in, right? Final category is called etc. because it's 1 or 2 things, and it's not enough for me to give them a category of their own, but they're not similar enough for me to name the category with something to represent these things. But anyway, biggest issue, ending of the book. I went into this book thinking this Fatal Kiss was a standalone, but Jacinka wrote the ending in a way that left space for a sequel. This would have been fine, but the ending felt rushed. Instead of it feeling open-ended purposefully, it felt like Jacinka had no idea how to wrap up the story, so she didn't. like there was no ending. And then I felt the dynamics in this book surrounding the poly romance could have used like a lot more work. The only dynamic I felt was sufficiently fleshed out was between Kazik and Gisela. I didn't understand why I was supposed to believe Kazik had a crush on Alexander. Or Alexi, that's his name, Alexi. When all we knew was that Kazik found him attractive and that he was nice to everybody. But our initial introduction to his feelings towards Alexi was that he didn't really like him as a person. He just liked looking at him, right? So I wasn't so sure why he was so against Gisela choosing Alexi to be the human to kiss her to break her situation or whatever. Then Gisela and Alexi didn't interact much without Kazik there. And then their connection felt more like a friendship and not a romance. So it wasn't giving poly at all. Then there were parts of the book that I did enjoy. So it wasn't all bad. The Slavic folklore and how it was included and explained throughout the book, I did enjoy that. And then the discussions surrounding sexuality, particularly bisexuality and polyamory, were interesting and enjoyable to see discussed and defended in this book, particularly in its ambiguous setting, right? The middle section of this book was quick. And I don't want to say that I enjoyed it, because I don't know if I enjoyed it because I actually liked it or because it was better than what I read it in the beginning and then what I had to deal with in the end. Okay? You know? Next book, This Ravenous Fate by Hayley Dennings. Yo, this disappointment, the levels are astronomical because I have been hyped for this book since Hayley went on sub, because I'm subscribed to her booktube channel, right? And I love her content, and I was really excited for her when it went on sub. It got picked up, and I was like, yes. And then I got the arc. DNF'd it. It was not good. It wasn't. It was like overwhelmingly boring from the very first chapter, like the first official chapter, not the prologue. The prologue hooked me, but then the first chapter released me back into the ocean. The book is pitched as a sapphic vampire ex-vampire hunter, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I hate when a synopsis lies to me. Do not lie to me. Like, tell me what it's about so I know what I'm reading. Don't lie to me, right? Elise is not a vampire hunter. She's the heir to a vampire hunting company, but she's never hunted a day in her life. She don't know what she's doing. She don't plan to do anything. Like, she's not a vampire hunter. Don't piss me off. And then it's supposed to be friends to enemies to lovers, except I saw no reason for them to become lovers. There was no chemistry. Most of their arguments feel like they happened for no reason other than to show that right now they're in the enemies section, you know? And then like they would be fighting, and then there's this supposed sexual tension that I'm supposed to believe is there, and then they're fighting over something else, and I wasn't feeling it. And then the mystery solving element was another letdown. Elise and Layla's strategy was boring. It went nowhere, and I felt no reason to continue reading the book. The only thing I could say was done well was the discussion of privilege versus race. But then also at times it felt like I was attending a lecture and not reading a book, you know? So I wish I enjoyed this book, but I didn't. Then we have an anthology, All These Sunken Souls by Cersei Moskowitz. Overall, it was a bad reading experience, but I did enjoy some of the story. Mainly the story by Kalynn Bayron, because Kalynn Bayron is my girl, one of my favorite authors. And I say that just by reading This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate. But I do plan to read her entire backlist this year, so I'm going to do a reading vlog. So that is coming out this year. But anyway, I was really disappointed with this anthology. It started out quite enjoyable because the first story was by Kalynn Bayron. But anyway, so the stories that I liked were Lights by Kalynn Bayron, which is definitely my favorite short story. And then there's Be Not Afraid by Ashia Monet, which had me looking forward to reading more of their books. And then finally, All My Best Friends Are Dead by Liselle Sambury, which made up for Tender Beasts, which I will be mentioning later on in this video. Right, so I enjoyed those. Then The Thief Came Out at Night by Sami Ellis was okay, but I didn't love it. I felt the writing style was easy to read, but after a while the story dragged on, and I don't know how you make a story drag on if it's a short story. And then even that, like, it's a short story, and I feel like it dragged on, but then the ending could have been wrapped up better. So, more negatives than positives. I Love Your Eyes by Joelle Rochester. I hated that one. I hated that one. That one was terrible. The writing itself was not done well, and the plot twist made no sense. Absolutely no sense, given the POV we were in. Like, I wish I could explain to you, but it wasn't logic. I'm getting pissed off again. You can't do that if the person's head we were like, you can't. Let me see if I can. Okay, I'm going to put up spoilers just in case. But then the twist was that the POV we were in was the evil person all along. But you can't do that because we were in her head reading her thoughts. So we would have known. It's not like she can hide her thoughts from herself. She don't know we're reading. She don't know we're in her head. So why would she hide her thoughts from herself? The consumption of Vienna Montrose by Joelle Wellington left me confused and uncomfortable in a way. It's not the uncomfortable that you want to be when you read a horror story. It's a different kind of uncomfortable. And I never liked that. And all it did was cement the fact that Wellington is not the author for me. Because I read Their Vicious Games whenever I read it. And I reviewed it. I think I read it in 2020. Was it this year? I don't know. But I reviewed it. No, it was 2023, right? Anyway, I reviewed it. And you can watch my review. You should watch my review. Yeah. Not for me. The writing itself was enjoyable, but the plot... It was not. And then the rest of the stories felt very, very average. And my biggest takeaway was there seemed to be some kind of common obsession with teeth. And I didn't get it because... Anyway, moving on. Better Must Come by Desmond Hall. I did a full review of this book. And I'm not going to hurt my brain to talk about it anymore. Bottom line is... And I'm going to speak directly to Desmond Hall right now. Ready? Leave Jamaica alone and try writing about something that you actually have even the tiniest inkling of knowledge about, because Jamaican culture, obviously you don't know anything and you've never tried to know anything. Anyway, moving on. Tender Beast by Liselle Sambury. This one, I DNF'd it. And even though I DNF'd it, my biggest feelings towards this book is not like hatred or dislike. It's mostly disappointment. Because I read... Delicious Monsters and Bloodlight Magic by Liselle Sambury and enjoyed both of those books a lot. So Tender Beast, I didn't expect to be DNF in this one. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I think I reviewed it somewhere. I'll find the thing and link it. But mostly I didn't get the sibling relationship in it. That was the worst part. It never made any sense to me. Next, Boys I Know by Anna Garcia. I really hated my reading experience with this. That main character, me hate that girl there. Her voice was insufferable. And I think I read about 50% of this book. And there was no development. So, what am I reading the story for? The Build-Up by Tati Richardson. This book was also disappointing. And I DNF'd it about 30%. I had issues with the writing, the characters, and the romance. So, writing style, I couldn't connect with it. It felt flat and awkward. And there was a lot of I know people say the advice about telling show not tell is not always accurate, and you should some people do more I know the critiques about discussing telling not showing, but what I mean is in this book the author would tell me say them love each other or they're so perfect for each other and then not show them actually being perfect for each other, in their interactions, the words that they're speaking to each other. Them yapping, and I don't understand. I'm not seeing them in a relationship. You know what I mean? She would tell me that something is funny, and the characters would laugh at something being funny, and I'm reading over the line that the person said previously that it's supposed to be funny, and I wasn't fucking laughing. It just pissed me off. How she did it so many. I feel. In the 30% that I read, there were so many instances of a character laughing at something or saying something was funny, and I didn't find anything hilarious about the last chapter at least. So, no, it just pissed me off. And then, this might sound nitpicky, but when you add it up with everything else, it doesn't equal out a good reading experience. But in the first chapter, a character said they expected the female MC to be a man because of her name. But then her name is Ari. I don't know if somewhere in foreign that is a typically masculine name, but that sounds pretty feminine to me, right? characters. I am always up for reading romances with plus size MCs, but in this book, the author would bring up Ari's size so frequently. And I believe the intention was to show how comfortable Ari was with her body, and like how all the negative was coming from other people's view, and how smaller people take accommodations for granted. But after a while, it just started feeling like there was too much focus on her body and not her as a person or as a character. Like, I'm reading the book and I'm just seeing this flashing neon sign saying, remember, she fat, she fat, she fat. I'm like, yeah, she fat, and okay. And then one of the partners in the firm came off like as a cartoonish antagonist, just to contrast how good and angelic the other one is, and it felt ridiculous. And then finally, the relationship, it was more insta lusty than anything else. And the connection that they felt, they kept referring to, like there was this big romantic or sexual connection between the characters. They kept talking about it being there, and I never see it. I was searching and I couldn't find it. Finally, 12th Night by Alexene Farroll Follmuth. I think I pronounced that right. This one is another DNF, and once again, my main feelings are disappointment and not hatred or dislike, mostly because of how much I loved My Mechanical Romance by this author and how popular her books are when she writes under the name Olivia Blake. And I wasn't expecting 12 Nights to be such a DNF. Mostly, I don't even remember what my biggest issue was, and I'm looking at the screen. I didn't write a review for 12 Nights, so I'm going to talk off the top of my head and from what I remember. And this is one of the books where I don't like. I remember not liking it, but I don't remember anything about the book. What I do remember was I didn't like the main character, and I felt like I should have liked her because I understood where she was coming from, and I understood why she had feelings, why she had the feelings that she had, and I understood the way how she reacted, and I felt like I should have related to her because she was very angry and she was very aggressive, and I have been described as aggressive many times, positively, like somewhat neutrally, like somebody's just pointing it out, and then also as like a critique of me as a person, and it was something that I had to work on. So I feel like I should have at least understood where she was coming from and related to her slightly. But I was just sick of her. Like, I just wanted her to shut up. And I don't know why, but I just wasn't connecting. But that's all. Those are my top 10 best books of 2024 and then my worst books of 2024. As I said, I do have a couple videos scripted, ready to be filmed. So look out for my review and discussion of the Deathless series by Namina Forna, my review of all of Andrew Joseph White's books, and then I'm going to do a reading vlog. I know I'm going to do a reading vlog of Kalynn Bayron's backlist. Yeah. Okay. Regarding liking, commenting, and subscribing, do what you want. Bye.